Binge watch and learn on TRS Clips.
This is not a theoretical thing. You know why I say robotics greater than demographics? It's kind of already happened on the internet. You know why? 12 years ago, Instagram had it's on the order of 12 people, 13 people, and Kodak had about 1,000x that number, 13,000 people. Who won? Instagram, right? So they're 1/1000th the size with 1,000x as many users for their digital photography, right? So that's like a millionfold differential of a small, highly motivated team with the internet. Why is that? Because they could hit a key and they could automate all these things, right? They weren't manually going and, having a dark room where they hold up all those photos. Remember, from the 80s, they weren't doing all that. That was done on servers. So they had robots working. We call them, they call them online. You call them bots, right? You call them bots online. They had bots, automated, jobs, schedulers that would take in things from their users and they would, signal process them and apply the filters and give them back, right? They didn't have a huge dark room doing this because robotics are demographics. Rather than have thousands of people doing this manually, they had code doing it, right? And that's the story of the last 20 years is everything online is automated. And a small team can do much, much more than a large number of people if that small team is smart enough. You give the right instructions to the right robots, and then you just sit back and everything is taken care of, okay? That fits the Indian mindset, by the way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We just want to we don't want to crank the thing all day long. We want to figure it out, write the right instructions, and let it go. Okay?
Small and efficient.
Yes. So that's our leapfrog strategy. Okay. So just like, you go from nothing, to, you don't go to landlines, you go directly to cell phones. India, if it does want to get into manufacturing, should just go straight to robotics.
Boom.
Okay, right?
Okay,
Why is this? And this is part of a general thesis, which is, I did this on Thunmay's show a while back, how India can win-win. So we can link that, in here. Okay. I guess you know him. He's a friend and so on.
Yeah.
Right? I know he's another podcast. You don't want to link another podcast, but it's fine. Okay. But basically, the overall theory is India's strategy should be software first on everything. So because India's really strong on software, so every problem convert it into a software problem. So how do you convert manufacturing into a software problem? Robotics, right? Because the 6 degree of freedom arm, which is like, so it's why it's 6, it's like X, Y, and Z. And then it's like, it's it's theta and phi, it's orientation in 3 space, okay?
Didn't understand this.
All right. Point is, there's a robot arm, a type of robot arm called a 6 degree of freedom robot arm, where just with software, you can do a lot.
Okay.
Okay. And pause me anytime I'm just saying stuff that is not.
No, this is the only point.
Okay.
Go on.
All right, great. The thing about robotics is actually there's a lot of Indians who are good at robotics. I did robotics in my first company, genomics company. There's Gray Orange. There's diapers.com. There's like Mithra Robotics. There's this new thing called Clone that Gary Tan and I just funded by Indian guy in the US. There's quite a lot of Indians into robotics. It's something that we're good at, I think, or at least we're definitely competitive in it, right? Indians have had lower labor productivity than Chinese for a long time, if you've gone and measured that, right? And it's a little bit like, it's funny to put it this way, but it's just something where there's this Russell Peters clip. Do you know Russell Peters? Okay. So, he's talking about how Indians were once slaves, right? And he's like, but can you imagine an Indian who's a slave? No, you pick the content, I'll make the t-shirts. Remember, that part, that clip?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We can play that clip, right? I'm messing it up, okay? Point being that the Indian stereotypically wants to just kind of figure it out conceptually and not do the manual labor if they can avoid it, right? So robotics fits that mindset. It fits that kind of cultural groove of figuring it out, because actually it's quite hard, by the way, conceptually and mathematically to figure out exactly how you orient this robot arm and how do you script it. Like that's code, that's math, that's intellectually challenging. That we like, okay? Figure that out and then let the assembly line run, okay? All right, so coming back. So just in your narrative about what generates power, first, money alone doesn't necessarily do it. Too much money can actually be a weakness. 2, the AI thing is as big as like coal or oil. And in the past, it wasn't just quantity of people. Is once we got to coal and oil, you could mine muscle out of the ground. Now we can mine brain out of the ground with silicon. 3, the robotics or greater than demographics is not some futuristic thing where you actually have to, people, when I say that, sometimes they have to visualize a physical robot running around. We will get that. Okay. Tesla's working on that. There's a lot of this stuff out there. Robotics is far more advanced. Have you seen the Boston Dynamics videos?
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, we'll put a clip up maybe that I tweeted a few months ago. It's like 10 years of progress. Okay. And it shows over the last 10 years how like physical walking robots have gone from very slow and connected by a cable consuming a lot of power to things that can move completely on their own, do backflips. Have you seen that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Right?
Like the Jetsons.
Like the Jetsons.
We're getting closer to the Jetsons.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I think that within our lifetime, everybody will have their own robotic Man Friday or Jeeves, okay, or multiple, right? Like you'll have a house robot like your car. That is coming, okay? So that should be an important goal. Like if you have a few goals for India, that's a big one. I actually wish, this would be a good thing for some senior politician to do, is for any area where India wants to do well technologically, they should have like a custom IIT style exam that they just tweet out. For example, let's say you want India to do well, like you've heard the term industrial policy, right? Everybody thinks industrial policy means spending money, okay? But it could just be you put together a rigorous exam on robotics, you tweet that out, and the top 10 scorers get an audience with the prime minister.
Damn.
Okay. What will you get? You'll get 10 million kids across the country studying for this, leveling up the country. Okay. And in that skill set for basically free, you have the curriculum online as well. All right. And then the winners go and get an audience with PMO and they talk about what they're doing for like 1 hour of time from PMO, which time is valuable, of course. You have this very scalable thing. You have to build a curriculum and so on beforehand, right? And think about how much cheaper that is than spending money. That's what I'd like to see India's industrial policy. America's industrial policy.
You're doing the Indian thing by saying, I'll come up with a concept I want.
Yes, exactly. Right. That skills. It's smart. It's smart lazy.
Right.
Right. It is. How do you get leverage out of it and do it in a smart way? Right. And what that does is, industrial policy is not about money. It's about skills, skill building. Skill building is about education. The reason I know the US isn't serious about this is it's just spending money. You know what it isn't doing? It's not Biden tweeting out an exam about quantum mechanics, right? If you're actually serious about semiconductor leadership, he should be talking about not that he even knows what this stuff is, okay? But like, the band gap and crystal structures and, you could actually devote these political feeds to something more valuable than just stupid lowest common denominator stuff, right? You could have, you could direct people's attention to what's important. What I just described, by the way, with that like robotics exam competition, you can apply it for nuclear power, right? You can apply it for any other area of interest to the country. You take India's existing exam culture, because we have an exam culture, right? The JEE and so on and so forth. You take India's existing exam creators, right? Because you've got the people who set the JEE, right? The ones who write the JEE questions. You just task them with doing this, okay? And maybe you have proctored administration of the exam, okay? So there's some logistics that are associated with that. There you go. That's your industrial policy.
Okay. This is probably the podcast where I've spoken the least. Okay. Because you're breaking a lot of my preconceived notions about a lot of different things. Also, I'm trying to download as much as I can off of you, and I'm going to take this in my further podcasts.
Totally.
Especially when I'm talking to the politicians.
Yep.
Because I've spoken to a lot of politicians in the recent past, and I know that they listen, but they're so busy that they want condensed information.
Totally.
Okay, so one of my requests to the audience is, I know there's a lot of Twitter users listening to this episode, try making threads which will eventually reach people like Piyush Goyal, Smriti Irani, Dr. Jaishankar, and PM Modi.
Yeah, we can do the 1 minute version, 140-second version compressed at the end.
Yes. Okay. Right. No, for sure. I love that you're breaking geopolitical narratives, etc. And you're kind of giving a strategic roadmap about what we are supposed to do going forward.
Yes.
I have a lot of geopolitical questions related to India, which we'll come to in some time.
Yes.
I'm going to break away from geopolitics just for a second.
Totally.
And kind of go to a bit of a human level with you.
Okay, sure, of course.
Okay. And again, please correct me where I'm making a wrong assumption.
Of course, yeah.
Okay. So the narrative for the longest time on the Indian internet, I'd probably even go as far as saying up to the podcast that we did with Dr. Jaishankar, which was in May of this year. He's our external affairs minister. He didn't paint brain drain as something bad. That was the narrative on the Indian internet for very long, that we've lost a lot of smart Indians to the rest of the world.
Oh, yeah.
Which was true, which is called the brain drain problem.
Right. Brain circulation is a better term or something like that. People have said.
And that brain drain was the common term you'd hear in India. Okay. I'll give you a visual of what it was like growing up in India for me. I'm born in 1993. All my life, I was told by all my relatives that my biggest goal in life should be leaving the country. And by nature, I was a very rebellious person. So the more I was told to leave the country, the more I wanted to stay.
Okay.
So I ended up staying. All my friends ended up leaving. Most of them went to America. Many of them wished to come back. I wanted to take the same rebellious narrative and put it online. So I kind of fed this reverse brain drain problem. I said, no, you got to come back and you got to help the country. And then we have Dr. Jaishankar on the show. And he said that, no, don't look at it that way. Look at it like the Indians abroad need to help the Indians here help the geopolitical game that India is playing.
Yes.
Like we need to work together, like more like a tag team.
Okay, so I'll give a framework on this.
Sure.
Okay, right. So China is 10x Germany, India is 10x Israel. Okay, so China is 10x Germany, and then I'll get to India in a second, right?
Sure.
Why I say China is 10x Germany? So China today is similar to the Germany of the early 20th century, where it is a manufacturing colossus, really. That is highly militarized under one supreme leader, okay, non-English speaking, with territorial issues nearby, a beef against the Anglo-American order, and is a legit contender for the tech and military power of the whole world, which in turn is causing a bandwagoning against it, okay, and a unification within the country, right? Very similar. Now, of course, those were non-white, those were, in Germany, they were white and on the right. And in China, they're non-white and ostensibly communist and on the left. But otherwise, modeling China's 10x Germany as this giant manufacturing Goliath that's just very highly organized is a good way of thinking about it. Conversely, India is like 10x Israel, okay? So both China and India have a diaspora, right? But China's diaspora is starting to get pushed back abroad because all kinds of countries are, I think, in many cases, very stereotypically, and it's unfortunate, but they're like, oh, every Chinese immigrant, every Chinese tech guy, every Chinese person in academia, especially if they've got a Chinese first name, which indicates that they usually came from China recently, they're under suspicion of being a Chinese spy in the US, right? So it's becoming harder for the Chinese diaspora abroad. They're getting pushed back, and I think it'll be in those countries where China has hard power, like Iran or Africa, the Chinese diaspora can operate. And then they're like an extension of the Chinese state over there. But their soft power is eroding dramatically in the West and so on. India, and the reason that's important is if you go and look at academia in the USA, right? Like Stanford Electrical Engineering or something, where 20 years ago, the department, and it's probably even, I haven't looked at the demographics today, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's even more so, was on the order of 35-40% Chinese, 35-40% Indian, and the rest other groups, right? Those are almost like the two wings of the airplane from the grad students are propping it up. And so if you knock out one of those wings, if you knock out the Chinese tech talent wing on something, India will have to like surge to be the other part of it. So whereas the Chinese diaspora is receding, the Indian diaspora is accelerating, okay? So plus India's general influence on the world stage is increasing. So India should be able to negotiate visa deals with many countries. Obviously Dr. Jaishankar is very on top of it, very smart guy. But basically any country that asks them of India, you should say, okay, let's get 1 million visas a year or whatever reasonable number there is, Every country is scared of having, oh my God, if we have totally open, transit, we're going to have a billion Indians coming in. But some very fast track e-visa kind of thing, so you can do business, facilitates business travel back and forth. And that's the thing that's a huge pain, right? You just want to be able to go very quickly and go to a conference, go to something without a hassle, right? So So what I think is going to happen is those countries will say yes to this with the passport ask, the visa ask. That's an ask, by the way, that lots of tech CEOs in the US are supportive of. Lots of people on the left and the right in India. That's something that you can get a big coalition behind, is just better travel, right, for Indians. So the Indian diaspora expands to fill the space the Chinese diaspora is receding to fill. And the thing is that if China plays perhaps the world's best home game, India plays perhaps the world's best away game.
Wow. Okay.
So China has built all this ridiculous infrastructure and so on at home. Their cities are amazing. They glow, all this stuff. India has exported all these tech CEOs and presidents and prime ministers and venture capitalists that are heads of billion-dollar funds. All the guys like my parents' generation, they spoke with an accent, right? But they planted seeds, and now the 30 and 40 somethings like myself, I'm just like one like tiny version of this. But there's a lot of folks who are my peers. We're just entering the power corridor of our careers, and we speak without an accent, right? And we're leveling up in the world at large, right? So in a sense, there's about 7 million Indians that emigrated, and 7-8 million, depending on how you look, and the US, UK, Australia, Canada, they did very well abroad, okay? And then we're like the advanced scouts, okay, of this Indian diaspora. That's why I said India is like 10x Israel, because Israel started with the diaspora and then got the state. India starts with the state and now is building the diaspora.
So TRS Clips has all sorts of videos and all sorts of playlists. Make sure you explore the channel by subscribing and heading to our homepage and reading through all the playlists.